Om Asatoma Satkamaya Tamasoma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritam Gamaya Aviravirmayedhi Rudrayate Dakshinam Mukham Te Namam Pahi Nityam. May the divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the divine consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. Welcome, everyone. Hope all of you had a good summer. And as we begin the fall session every year, we begin with Krishna's celebration of Krishna's birthday. According to the lunar calendar, he was born about 3 weeks ago. It does look like a 3-week-old baby right now, you see. And so, there are at least 3 things that are important when we study Krishna, but also any of these great figures that have come down to us throughout history. The first thing, of course, is inspiration. Many people who have read Krishna's life, but also his teachings, have found it very inspiring. But inspiration is important as it is. If we do nothing about it, it can die out after a while. So that's why sometimes we feel inspired and sometimes we just don't feel inspired at all. So the logical next step to inspiration is education. So when we get inspired by something, then just getting carried away by that inspiration will not do. We must use that energy that is released by that inspiration to then try to learn something from it. And so that's the kind of a question we can ask when we look at Krishna's life. Yes, if I'm inspired by it, what can I learn from this life? But even education itself is not enough unless we actually do something about it, put it into practice. So if there is anything that rings true, anything that resonates with our head and heart, then it's not enough to simply say, oh yeah, I agree with it, or I think it's a great idea. And just then, and the rest of our life can go the way it has always gone. That doesn't help. So if something makes sense, again, we don't have to follow anything blindly. But if something makes sense, then the next logical step would be to say, how can it become a reality in my own life? In other words, how can I put it into practice? So sometimes I say inspiration is like getting a car, education is like learning how to drive it, and practice is to actually drive it. Because unless we drive the car, how will we reach the destination? And therefore, spiritual life is more than simply being inspired by it. It's more than simply reading books or listening to lectures. That's a part of education. But the next thing is to actually live it day after day, moment after moment. And that's the toughest part in some ways. There are a lot of things in life we know are true and good, but then we connect it with our life and say, if it is true and good, how much of it is real in my own life as I interact with people, as I do my work, as I go about carrying out my apparently mundane or secular activities? How much is spirituality a part? Because sometimes secular and spiritual can remain as 2 separate rooms or compartments in my life. So when we do something ostensibly spiritual, go to a place of worship, study, and then we feel kind of a spiritual euphoria, and then you say, go out into the world, and then you say, okay, now I'm going to close my spiritual door and now open it. And that's never going to help. Because that kind of a division in life doesn't help. And what Krishna's life and teaching show is that that kind of a division has to go. The sources to understand Krishna, there are 2 primary sources. If you go back to the ancient texts, One is the well-known epic Mahabharata, and the other is this lovely text called the Bhagavata. The Mahabharata, the Gita is actually a part of Mahabharata. And so a lot of what we know today about Krishna's life has come from these two ancient texts. But in addition to these two texts, a lot of books and a lot of literature has come, which also has become kind of secondary sources of learning about Krishna. Now, one of the challenges we find, especially with all these ancient figures, but I would imagine probably more of these figures which originated in the East, because the notion of history, as we understand it today, it's a relatively recent phenomenon, maybe in last few centuries. And so because of that, it didn't take long in the lives of many of these great ones that very soon after their passing, stories and anecdotes began to emerge. And then those of us now, separated by these figures through centuries, when you go back to the narratives from their lives, it's not often easy to understand which is history and which is stories. Because a lot of these things we read in Krishna's life do appear as if belonging more to mythology than to history. Some of these things are clearly, just because it's mythology doesn't mean it's not true, but it's a different way of narrating what may or may not have happened. And so, which is the way to know who real Krishna was? How much can books help us know who Krishna was? How much can lectures help us know who real Krishna was? Now, even if you think about our own lives, how much can we know a real person, even an average person? Even the people closest to us, people around us, people with whom we spend a lot of time, we might think that we know them, but most of our knowledge about other people is mostly, almost always about what we see outwardly, their appearance, the way they speak, the way they behave, the way they react, and that forms our judgment about people. We have no idea what's going on inside them. And so our knowledge about other people is always going to be limited and sometimes not even accurate. The only person we know fully, at least potentially we can know, is our own selves. If you look in a mirror, you'll have some idea about how you look outwardly. Although we can't see ourselves fully. We can't see the back of my head, for instance. But still, we only know what's going on inside our heads, provided we have enough interiority, provided enough way of looking inside. And so the only person any of us can know fully well is our own selves. And that is why the emphasis that is given in Vedanta on the self, because that's the only thing we can know inside out and outside in. And so when we think about Krishna's life, the question becomes not so much about which part of Krishna is historical, which part of is mythological, and there are a lot of scholars and they have done it over centuries and they'll continue to do it, and that kind of study has a value. But for a spiritual seeker, whether any of that external study is ever going to be conclusive is debatable. What we can ask is, what effect Krishna's personality and his teachings have on me? And that we see throughout history, hundreds and thousands of people who have looked at Krishna, studied his teachings. For many of them, Krishna has become a very real figure, more real than everything that we see around them. Not only that, inspired by the teaching, when they tried to live according to what Krishna taught, their lives were transformed. That they became progressively better and better versions of themselves. Now, our own transformation, that's not mythological. We will not ever doubt the changes occurring within us, because that's we are directly experiencing it. And so therefore the test of studying Krishna, it's not so much about analyzing Krishna's life, although that, as I said, has a value, but asking myself, in what do I learn from this? And if I put this into practice, what way can it change me? And if I've already been doing it for a while, how has it changed me already? And so the utility, I would think, and although I'm just specifically speaking about Krishna because we are celebrating his birthday today, this applies to all of these great ones that we worship today as incarnation, prophets, and so on. That what do I learn from it, and how it can change me, how it can make me a better person. And so keeping that in mind, I would think that there are, well, all of us have to do our own study to find out what we can learn from it. So that no one can put down a definitive list about these are the things you should be inspired by. And that's just our own personal study. But today I can just mention briefly at least 3 things. Not very technical, not very philosophical, but very practical, which is what Krishna's teachings always were. That among the many things we can learn from Krishna's life, here is at least 3 among them. And the first is the gist of the different incidents that occur in Krishna's life, right from the time he was a little baby, as an adorable childhood, and there are so many stories connected with Krishna's childhood. They call it the Balya Leela, the divine sport of Krishna when he was a little child. And of course, then he grows up, and then he is this the guide and mentor, and then even the charioteer of Arjuna in this big epic battle at Kurukshetra, which is the background for the study of the Gita as well. So throughout all this life, what we see is Krishna was always very, very cheerful. He's very, among all these great historical figures, he's probably in the top of the line, if you like, for being just such a playful, joyful figure. Very mischievous. You can see this, the one he is having the pot in his hand in that very popular image. It's butter. He was very fond of butter. And not simply the butter, that his mom oftentimes just hung it up high up in the ceiling so that little one hands won't reach it. Then he and his friends would then go in throughout the village and then try to see wherever it was within reach, or even climb on top of each other and stealing butter. So he begins his life with stealing. Yeah. And someone says, "Wow, such a divine figure, why would a divine, stealing is not good." And then, of course, then we read about it like, is there some symbolical meaning behind it? Is he still continuing to steal? And then what these devotional texts says, yeah, indeed, he's still a stealer. Now he steals our heart. And if our hearts are just hard and filled with hatred and anger, that doesn't sound very buttery. But if a heart is filled with love, is filled with kindness, filled with understanding, then that's the kind of heart Krishna would love to steal. And so, whichever way and whichever story we might have read about it, or if you have seen most people nowadays, reading has become so less. But luckily, there's lots of TV serials and visual videos and so on by which people come to know about Krishna. The image that comes before the mind is of a very joyful figure. And that's, one might say, that's one of the first lessons that can come to us. Swami Vivekananda once said that way back, and at least he was referring to the 18th, 19th centuries. The idea of a spiritual person was someone with a very long face, and as if all the burden of the world you are carrying upon you. That if you are joyful, cheerful, telling stories and being funny stories, like this person can't be spiritual. That was the old idea. But Swami Vivekananda used to say, if we are the children of the Divine Mother, and she is the one from the originator of all bliss, there is a phrase that is often used, Anandamayi, that she is just filled with bliss. And if we are children of that blissful divine figure, then it makes no sense that we'll always go about in a very morose and depressed sort of appearance. And so, Swami Vivekananda's one quote I particularly like. He says, by being cheerful always and contented, one can be nearer to God, nearer than any prayer. So even before we sit down to pray or to meditate, just if you're feeling very sad or depressed, and take a walk or read some funny story before doing your prayer, because I think the prayer will be more effective and the meditation will be better if again, not being hilariously excited, because that doesn't help the nerves at all. Just cheerfulness, not the two extremes, extreme depression and extreme overexcitedness. Somewhere in the middle, just being content, having the kind of a Mona Lisa smile, if you like. And you sit that way, all your muscles are relaxed, and then you pray and meditate in a one. In Krishna's life, we see the importance of being cheerful always. Swami Vivekananda's words come to mind. He said, despondency is not religion, whatever else it may be. By being pleasant always and smiling, it takes you nearer to God, nearer than any prayer. How can those minds that are gloomy and dull love? If they talk of love, it is false. They want to hurt others. Think of the fanatics. They make the longest faces, and all their religion is to fight against others in word and act. Think of what they have done in the past and of what they would do now if they were given a free hand. They would deluge the whole world in blood tomorrow if it would bring them power. By worshipping power and making long faces, they lose every bit of love from their hearts. So the person who always feels miserable will never come to God. That is not religion. It is diabolism to say, I'm so miserable. Every man has his own burden to bear. If you are miserable, try to be happy, try to conquer it. So, that's one of the lessons we can take with ourselves. That most of us probably might look and say, well, I'm happy and cheerful most of the time. Good. Now let me make it all of the time. Even those times when I don't feel so cheerful, I can force myself to be cheerful. And one simple trick to be cheerful is to force ourselves to smile. You see, when we are happy, a smile comes very naturally. We don't have to struggle for it. But when there is nothing to smile about, when we are angry or really depressed about something, a smile won't come naturally. But if we can force ourselves to smile, and that smile is not going to look natural, don't worry. But somehow, just the physical act, that the specific muscles getting stretched, if you like, there is this association between the state of mind and the corresponding activity in the body. So I'm not saying this is going to work all the time, but it works a lot of the time. So sometime if you're not feeling so great about it, just don't try to do it in front of company or other people. They say, why are you just smiling for no reason? Just when you're just by yourself, go into your room and just force yourself to smile. I guarantee you, you will begin to feel better. You will then realize that there are things to be happy about in life. It's not all just gloom and dust and dirt everywhere. There are positive things. So if we focus on the positive aspects of life, it will cheer us up. But that's not some kind of a way to escape from that which is not positive. But with that cheerful frame of mind, then when I look at things which are not so cheerful, I'll have a better way of knowing how I can deal with it. Yes, life has its good and bad sides, but if I'm just sunk in this, the negative aspects of life, only I can lift myself up. And so the idea is to get all the strength we can from the positive things and then be strong enough to deal with the negative things. And therefore, the first lesson is to be being cheerful and smiling always. The second reason is that the importance of being calm and at peace. In Krishna's life, we see that through all the challenges and difficulties, Krishna remains very calm. Of course, in his life, in his childhood, we see there were so many demons come and attack the village he was there, and this little child just goes and demolishes them. And again, this might sound very mythological, but the symbol behind it is that this joyful, cheerful little child, no danger exists which this cheerfulness and happiness cannot conquer. And then, of course, when you go to the Gita context, right in the middle of the battlefield, when it's so difficult to be smiling that time. And then Swami Vivekananda describes in his books the vision he had, that how everyone is like, there's a battle cry and everyone is raring to go. And Krishna stands there as the charioteer, holding these horses with his one hand, and his face, his smile, and he's very calm. And because he was able to maintain that calmness in the middle of the battlefield, that's how this one of the greatest teachings of the Gita emerged from it. Because otherwise it's a very unlikely background on which a profound philosophy can be taught. And that's possible. And we may not be on a battlefield of that kind today, although the battlefield is now coming into the cities, but still, no matter what's happening, we can still, if we can maintain calm, then we will know the right way to respond. Again, here is this Swami Vivekananda's words about this. He says, "It is the level-headed person, the calm person of good judgment and cool nerves, of great sympathy and love, who does good work and so does good to themselves. The fanatic is foolish and has no sympathy. He can never straighten the world, nor himself become pure and perfect." And then Swamiji goes on to say, "The calmer we are and the less disturbed our nerves, the more shall we love and the better will our work be." So second lesson, again, simple. Can I try to remain calm? One thing we can learn from our own experience in life. All of us have gone through difficult times. All of us have had challenges in life. And when we are passing through a difficult time, of course we feel agitated, we feel tense. But what feels like an earth-shattering event now, we look back at it, say 6 months later or a year later, and that challenge has passed. And then you can look back and just laugh about it. We can even say, "Oh my God, I was so tense then, and now I'm not so tense after 6 months." And just not too long ago, there was this big pandemic we had. Millions of people died all over the world. And it wasn't a pretty thing. Everyone was tense, everyone was worried, we were all masked. Remember? We used to mask. And now we are able to smile about it. Okay, don't smile too much, because there is a strain coming, but it's no longer the kind of danger we thought we were in. So many things in life show us that in the moment things appear terrible, but then let some time pass, just like clouds move, these good and bad things, they also keep on moving. And so a person might say, yes, things are bad, but such things have happened in my life before, and I'm able to look back and laugh at them. And if I'm going to laugh at and smile at these things after 6 months, why shouldn't I begin right now? And that's just what life can teach us. And finally, a central feature of Krishna's life is what we might say his non-attachment. In fact, his cheerfulness and calmness both became possible because of this quality of non-attachment. In fact, one recurring theme that occurs all through Krishna's life. Now, non-attachment doesn't sound like a very exciting thing or a wonderful thing like being calm and peaceful and cheerful. But that is at the heart of who Krishna was. We see, just the way Krishna's life comes down to us. As a little child, he was in this village in Nandagram and in Vrindavan. And then he moves to Mathura when he grows up. And that's where afterwards all these battle and everything occurred. We see that he has never gone back to this thing. There wasn't, every stage he was able to move without feeling any regret or anything about it. And such things happen in the lives of all of us. That no matter to what age group we belong, many of us will remember that when we were little, when we were children, we had a set of friends, and maybe some of us might still have those friends now after years or decades later. But oftentimes, we move. We go to study, college, career, here and there. Families get separated, friends get separated for various reasons. And so geographically, we might be far away. Sometimes we may not even know where some of the people who are close to us are today. And so either we can get locked up into the past and we just thinking about the past and not being able to deal with the present, or just be dreaming about the future. Now, what non-attachment does, it says at every experience we have in life, every association we have in life, every relationship we have in life, everything in life is trying to teach me something. And I should learn, I should grow, it's a nourishment for us. I should grow and I should keep moving. And as much as I can, extend a helping hand. But life is all about people coming together and people dispersing. That's how it is. Eventually, think about it. And it's a simple thing. We all know it, although we tend to forget it often. When we came into the world, we were just alone. It took a few days or weeks to even know, oh, these are my people, this is my family. All this, what is mine, it took a while for the baby to understand. So we came into the world alone, and when we go, even when you're surrounded by family and friends around our bed, when we go alone. And so separation and coming together, that's just the way life is. We may like it, we may not like it, but there's nothing we can do about it. That's just the way things are. So we need to find a way to deal with this reality of our existence. And that is what non-attachment can teach us. Non-attachment is not about, attachment, we think it is about other people, but primarily it's an internal, it's a psychological thing. The more I'm attached to my ego, that's the primary reason that I'm attached to the world, attached to the people, attached to places, attached to things, attached to food, attached to all external attachments spring from an attachment to the ego. And spirituality really means, can I loosen that hold of the ego upon me? And if there is this kind of more the ego reduction occurs, the non-attachment occurs automatically. And this is something interesting. The more non-attached we are, the more we can love. Sometimes we get mixed up with attachment and love. We think if I love somebody, then I am attached to that person. Wrong, according to Vedanta. Vedanta says attachment is an obstacle. I can love someone fully only I'm truly detached from it. Because truly detachment would mean I'm detached from my ego. Then I'm fully able to think of the object of my love. Otherwise, the more my ego is strong, it might seem as if I'm attached to someone else, but it's my attachment to the ego, and then to make everything and everyone around me as mine. This is my family, this is my country, this is my idea, these are my property. Where does that my come from? It comes originally from the I. And so they are very connected. And therefore, if you want to truly love, then this ego has to get out of the way. Because ego is what makes us feel I. And when the ego goes out, it's all about you. And so that is true love. When one's self-interest gets out of the way and one thinks about the object of one's love. So I will just now conclude with one of the verses from a text called the Panchadashi. It's a favorite verse of mine. Many of you who have been coming for a long time have heard me quote it very often. So bear with me, you'll have to hear it once again. So this verse is the first time I heard about it was when I first read the text. It was sometime in the early 80s. So it's almost close to 45 years ago. And this it's a pretty big text. But when this verse came, it just kind of struck a chord. And I was not me alone. There was a lot of our young monks were there in Madras in southern India. And we had our own printing press in the center there. So we were so inspired by this verse, we immediately went and designed one poster, and we had it hung up in every room of the monastery. So with all this big now build up to that. So this is the verse, and this is how it goes in Sanskrit. Yat abhavi na tad bhavi, bhavi chet na tad anyatha, iti chinta vishagnoyam bodho brahma nivartakaha. It just sound like mumbo jumbo if you don't know Sanskrit, but it's a pretty simple verse. Yat abhavi na tad bhavi. That which will not happen will not happen. Bhavi chet, if something is going to happen, na tad anyatha, no one can change it. Of course, it's a little like that kesara sara. What will be, what will not be, will not be. And then the second line of the verse says, iti chinta vishagnoyam bodha. Bodha means this knowledge, this awareness. Chinta vishagnaha destroys the poison of anxiety. And Brahma nivartakaha, and removes all delusion from the mind. It's actually pure common sense, but something we forget so often. And the idea is that in every situation in life, in every moment of our life, we are called upon to do things. We are called upon to take decisions. And at every time, we have to use our best judgment, use the skills and talents that have come to us through God's grace, use them in the best possible way. Work hard, be sincere, do the right thing as you see it. But having done your best, used your judgment and done the best you can, then you step back and then you say, there is nothing more I could have done in this situation. Now what will be, will be. What will not be, will not be. Because all of our anxiety is about, will this turn out well or not? Should it happen this way or not? Is a totally waste of energy. Because what will change the outcome is doing things about it. And if you have already done our best, then there is nothing more you could do at that moment. Our best can change over time. But at any given moment, if I have done my best in terms of my judgment and an action, then it makes sense to step back and be free from that anxiety. And it's not a very profound philosophy in some ways, basic common sense, but best. But recognizing that there are a lot of factors in life over which I have no control. The only factors I have control over is myself. And I'm going to do the best I can. And then step back and say, now let things take their own course. That's the way to non-attachment. So I would encourage all of you, and many of you have already been studying these things, but whenever you undertake a study of Krishna's teaching or his life or any other spiritual text, keep these things in the mind: inspiration, education, practice. And ask yourself, does any of this make sense to me? And if it makes sense, I must say, how can I put it into practice? Not next year, not when I retire. How can I put it into practice starting next morning or maybe right away? Because only what we put into practice will change us. Reading books will not change us. It can, in fact, well, it can change us because sometimes it can make us very proud and egoistic. I've read so many books. Big deal. Books and everything, and they're useful. I'm not saying it's useless, but provided I do something about it. Otherwise, it should not be another way of increasing my ego. Because that, again, why should my ego not be increased? Well, I don't want to suffer. The people who suffer most in life are people with bloated egos. And what we want is genuine humility, not a false kind of ego, just not going about saying, oh, I'm very humble. You don't have to say that. People who are humble never go and say, I'm humble. People who are smart never go and say, I'm the smart person. So we just have to be who we are. And a lot of these messages, a lot of these teachings will come to us when we undertake our own study of Krishna's life. So on this day, let us resolve that whatever spiritual studies we do in life, we will do it with attention. We will see what lessons come to us. And if they resonate with us, we will make an earnest effort to put them into practice. Om Jananim Saradam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu.